Welcome to Safe Doesn't Scale. I'm your host, David Walsh, founder of Limelight. This show is for marketing and growth leaders with a chip on their shoulder who are tired of playing it safe. I'm so excited. Today I've got AJ from Creator Match. AJ and I have known each other for over 2 years now, and I'm very jealous of how big and fast his agency is growing. I looked at your LinkedIn. You got 56,000 LinkedIn followers now. You've been growing that pretty quickly.
It's been wild. And I think everyone always assumes that, they always see the apple fall from the tree. And they think, oh, wow, you got to 56,000 in a day. They don't see the years and years I've invested into this platform, the ecosystem that we built with creators, the obviously business now and the millions of dollars we paid out to creators. I mean, it has been a long road and I'm just having fun with it now. I'm building our business in public. I'm sharing all the wins, but I would say I actually enjoy more about sharing the losses. I think they're the most relatable and everyone, and I'm sure you see this as well, because I love your content where you're very vulnerable. And so many founders paint this, I drive a Ferrari, I have a yacht, I fly private. And I'm like, no, guys, I literally have a bike. I don't even own a car. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. My friend's on the other side. He's another founder here. Like, we're making it work. We're hustling. We're in the trenches. So it's been a really fun journey and building an audience of, I think, creators, founders, and marketers.
Yeah, I mean, we could get into why authenticity and content is so valuable and so important. It's actually like, it took me a while to get used to that, right? Like, how do you actually speak honestly? But for those that don't know, both AJ and I are in the influencer space in B2B. I run a marketplace, he runs an agency. You have hired a ton of people recently. Things must be flying. How many team members are you up to now?
Yeah, so we're about 35 people around the world. It's a mix of about 10 full-time W-2 and then about 20, 25 contractors around the world. And I think, as I'm sure you know, agencies demand a lot of headcount, even with AI efficiency, which obviously every day we're trying to be closer and closer towards almost internally like a marketplace. But what we are selling is white glove service to brands. And it's very different than obviously what you're selling. And the cool thing is, I think early on, David, at least from the outset, people think that we compete, but we're kind of going after the same problem space, but how we solve it are two very different things. And I think brands need to understand that they're very different solutions. And some brands, I'll actually say, hey, you're not ready for an agency. Actually, a marketplace is way better. You should keep this in-house. Versus, other brands might say, hey, we're trying to scale, spend $1 million a month, but we need 4 full-time people from your team. We're doing IRL events, we're doing paid media, we're doing YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, and that's when they're really ripe for agencies. So there's not one right or wrong way to do things, but just really asking yourself, what do you want to do? Do you want to have a done for you service or do it with you or do it by yourself?
Yeah. Well, I'll say to anyone listening to this, AJ has been one of the best partners to Limelight from day one. I feel like we thought initially we were competing, and then it was like, wait, there's some opportunity here to partner. So I speak so highly of you and your agency. And anytime a company comes to us and maybe is that bigger scale or wants more of that hand holding, I'm like, look, you've got to go to the team at Creator Match. So indirectly, I've been, directing people your way. You've been much more proactively sending people my way, which my team loves. So we're huge fans of you, and I appreciate you coming on to chat with us. We've got so much to chat about, right? We could I think the ideal process is we just go deep into influencer marketing and how it works. And I'll start by saying, like, listening to you talking about your agency, I initially wanted to steer away from agency. I said, I want to build software. And like, have you ever heard the phrase, like, the grass isn't always greener? I always feel like I really should launch an agency and be focused on that. And then I'm like, no, I want to stay in my, in my lane, and I want to build software that scales. But like, we've had our challenges internally, right? Like, how do we retain customers? Like, and the truth is, where the market is today, I think like brands want a human in the loop. They don't want to just do it by themselves. And when they're at the scale that they can, spend enough money, then they're willing to spend it on an agency. So we're still trying to figure out, like, where exactly do we fit into all of this? You've done some of the most impressive campaigns on LinkedIn and other channels, right? I know now you're doing a lot more than just LinkedIn. What's one recent campaign, let's say, that you've been really excited about and proud about? Talk to us a little bit about it.
So I'm very big on IRL. I think we all are. I saw spend even from the VC side of how much money is being dumped into IRL. And AI is getting so scary to the point where I'll follow influencers now and I don't even realize that they're AI. And I always say this is the worst it will be. So IRL is the only way to actually prove that people are real. I guess it's unless it's a robot from SpaceX or Tesla. So how we have this basically philosophy of how you can bridge the IRL to the URL. And with IRL, so much of this exists in the B2C world, right? So you have Coachella and every brand activating at Coachella. You have these massive festivals, events, you have seating and gifting, but none of that exists in the general world of tech or B2B or AI. And everyone's just trying to go as high volume as possible with creators, but not actually having that in-person element. So one of the things we did last year is we partnered with one of our amazing brand partners, Zapier, an incredible AI orchestration platform, and actually helped them bring about 30 of the biggest AI creators in the world, flew them out to Utah for something called Zapier Outpost. And we stayed in Airstreams. We spoke to their CEO, their whole C-suite was there. We had a 3-day hackathon in the desert. And we were all basically flown out to be there, create content, meet each other. And the perception of the brand and how strong our relationship is now as creators was phenomenal. And brand is really the last moat, I would say, today that exists, because at the end of the day, you think your product's so amazing, and tomorrow someone vibe codes it in a day. And then every day you're stair-stepping features, versus at the end of the day, brand is the only thing that really matters, I think, today in 2026. So that was one of the many, I think, IRL events that we're doing with creators, and then trying to take as much content, bring it to URL, and then put paid media behind it for influencer whitelisting. So that was a really fun event, and we have a lot more in store for IRL to URL.
Man, that is so inspiring. You must be on a plane a lot, though. You must be traveling quite a bit.
Yeah, 55 flights last year. The goal is 100 this year. I've never seen bad ROI from being in person. I also think, speaking to some of the other founders, or even people in corporate listening, you have to ask yourself what your zone of genius is, not just what you're good at, but also what you love to do. I'm one of those very crazy founders that my social battery actually recharges when I'm more social. And it's
Yeah.
very backwards. I don't need time by myself. So my zone of genius is being on planes, chatting with prospects, building relationships with brands, which are our clients, and then also deepening relationships with talent agencies, talent. And I love it. I love going to events. I love meeting people. And for me, it really fills my cup. And again, the IRL, so many people are so lazy. So they send 5,000, 10,000 cold emails in a day for outreach. I'm like, no, I'm going to go as the opposite as possible, as unscalable as possible, and go meet these people in person at events, conferences all over the world.
Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, that sounds exciting. I was in a conference last week for SaaS Stock in Austin, Texas, and I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. I was like, why don't I do this more often? I'm like sitting in my office by myself, working online, nonstop, chronically online. And I'm like, I need to go out and actually go to these events and put myself out there. I feel like I used to be an extrovert, and then now I'm more of an introvert, but we'll see.
I emceed that conference last year, SaaS Stock Austin, and it's wonderful, wonderful conference. And they have it all over the world, I think, now.
I think I saw that actually. I forgot that. Yeah, that's so cool.
Well,
That's
the pitch
amazing.
competition,
We
right?
did. We won the pitch competition last year, which was awesome. Yeah, got a big check on stage, and like it was a huge thing, and yeah, it was awesome. And then they invited me back and gave me a booth and gave me a talking engagement. So I was like, I have to go.
Amazing.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So how do we like? There's so many things I want to ask you about. I think like the first thing is measurement. How do people focus on getting a return on investment from influencer marketing? There's so many different thoughts processes with this. So let's start with actually who is usually the buyer for you guys? What job description, what titles, and where does this budget and line item come from?
Sure.
Is like a great starting off point.
So it's so important to understand, like you said, like not just marketing teams, but these companies are so large, and you have those companies that have thousands of employees, and also you have companies where you're working directly with the CMO or the CEO. I would say in general, from what we've seen, is most brands that we're working with either don't have an influencer team at all. So we're not targeting influencer marketing manager or lead or creator marketing manager, but we're actually going after the growth marketer, because for whatever reason right now, influencer sits under growth. And that also is under demand. And also, I would say ladders all the way up to CRO, basically, or just revenue in general. The problem is that a lot of these teams are treating influencer marketing like a performance marketing channel. And I'm not saying there can't be performance marketing elements, which comes in from paid media, influencer whitelisting, and actually boosting the content, working with their paid media team. But at the end of the day, we're seeing, I just spoke to a CMO literally earlier today for a very large company. He literally said we're moving influencer from growth and demand under brand. I think that's really where influencers should live and sit. So you're pulling from different budgets. So some brands have a brand budget or an awareness budget. They have an influencer budget. You can also pull from the paid media budget or ad budget, because if you're boosting, that boosting spend and also the spend sent to the creators for usage rights should come from the ad budget, basically. So you have to get very creative of how you essentially allocate spend accordingly. But at the end of the day, I'd say anybody in marketing is fair game, and they can just have different titles and they're all going after the same thing to market their usually product.
I want to go back to one thing you said, because it might skip the audience who are listening to this. It's like this boosting idea, right? I speak to companies all the time. It's like, how do I make this more measurable? It's like, well, take 20% of the budget, go live with as much content as you can to see what's working, what's resonating, take the content that's resonating, and then put some spend behind that and retarget that and go directly after your audience type. It seems to perform really well. We're not as involved in that process. We just guide people to do it. And then they're like, hey, will you do it for me? I'm like, no, like we don't want to get in there. where do you like, how do you think about that?
So the first problem that we're seeing, and I think given that we're literally called creator match, right? We sit in between the influencer house and the paid media house. For whatever reason, most companies treat them as silos. They don't talk to each other. They have very different OKRs or KPIs. They should be best friends because the influencer team should be getting the best possible content for the paid media team and vice versa. So we're bringing them together and actually pulling them into Slack and trying to make them become best friends because we want literally our metric of success. I always say, I want to get you promoted. So how do I get someone from paid media promoted? Running the highest performing ads. How do I get someone from influencer marketing promoted? Running the splashiest campaigns, the ones like the Ramp Super Bowl, Brian from the Office campaign, where everyone and their mother is talking about the Notion Faces campaign. We don't even need, and we'll talk about attribution in a second, but nobody ever looked at Notion Faces and said, was there ROI there, right? We still get inquiries today saying, hey, I saw the campaign that you helped run in January of 2024 or 5, whenever it was. We want to do something similar, right? And you can imagine the uplift from Notion on the brand side. So for us, in between these two, you absolutely should be putting paid behind this influencer content. If you're not, it is such a wasted amount of money and effort because these are the best performing ad types. And you can, I'm sure you see, you guys are probably run thought leader ads on LinkedIn. You can ask LinkedIn this as well, but we're working with a lot of B2B brands. They're running this content, and whether it's coming from the executives or coming from the creators, they're substantially outperforming your traditional company ads. And even without looking at any data, if you see two ads, one is coming from the brand's name, image, and likeness versus a creator's name, image, and likeness, of course the creator's going to perform better. And there's a whole world on other platforms like Instagram, even YouTube. LinkedIn is still so new, and most brands don't know how to scale it with creators. And that's, again, why I think both of us exist.
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah. I mean, like we sing off the same hymn sheet. I'm constantly advising companies to take some of that budget. And then also, like, what's interesting is the paid ad budget, in my experience, is 10 times bigger than any other marketing ad spend. So you're like, just take a tiny little bit of that and put it behind the great content that the influencers are creating, and you're going to get to a really great result. Oh my God, there's so many thoughts in my head right now where we could go with this. I actually think, like, for people listening to this, what's the most expensive mistake that you see that B2B marketers and brands are doing when working with creators? I'm sure you've got a ton. So, like, feel free to give me like the top few that come to mind. What's the biggest mistakes you're seeing?
I would say the biggest mistake is treating influencer or creator marketing as pure performance marketing, which we discussed, but also doing it in a very one-off fashion. The best programs are programs. That's also why we've actually fine-tuned our tagline. So traditionally we were LinkedIn creator marketing for B2B brands. And then now we build creator programs for tech brands. So we're broadening because what we also learned, let's say Notion, one of our very early clients on the brand side, we were running their B2B marketing. The problem is, like, David is a great example. Am I targeting him from the B2B standpoint or the B2C standpoint? Because he kind of fits in both buckets. So you almost get to this B2C to B, where you almost want to get consumers hooked on your product. And then when they join companies from the bottom up, they're saying, hey, IT, hey, to the C-suite, we need to use Notion or Airtable, whatever it may be, right? So I think for this, you have to treat it like an always on program. So for us is so much of what we did, and you guys had the same problem, we saw massive churn early on, where you do these one-off campaigns, it goes great, and there's just massive fall off. And if you don't have the brand bought in, as this is a long-term 6, 12 plus month partnership, the creators are not happy. You're also paying for a la carte content, which is very expensive versus a buffet that you can buy a bundle. So like if I charge, 10K for one post, I might charge 15K for 2 posts. So you're unlocking essentially discounts when buying in bulk. You can also buy multi-channel. You can also buy usage rights, going deeper with fewer creators versus just trying to scale with the volume. So again, creator marketing is not a one-off game. The best programs in the world have always on motions within creator marketing, but also what we do on a monthly basis, evergreen on monthly, and then usually quarterly splashes. So a splash could be a Notion Faces. It could be an IRL moment. It could be sponsoring a creator's dinner. It could be flying creators, AI creators to the desert for a Zapier hackathon. And those two combined, as a whole lead to an incredible creator program that what we do is what we run at Creator Match.
I absolutely love that. I hadn't heard you say that before, which is like this splash. It's like always on, and then it's these moments that you just go all in, right? Take over news feeds, do something unique and different, go in real life, and then digitalize it, as you said. All of that sounds so interesting. I think, like, the hard part is a lot of companies just aren't there yet, right? They come to me, for example, I'll give you an example. They're like, well, we want to dip our toe in. We're not ready to commit yet to the 12 months. We have some issues with this, that, and the other. They really want to test. And you're trying to find the right balance of, like, hey, you need to spend money to see value, right? You can't just assume that you're going to spend, do 3 posts with 3 influencers and it's going to generate 10 new customers for you. That's not realistic. So, like, the question I have for you is, saying no to revenue is really challenging as a founder. What changed in your mind? Bring us back, right, to those churn moments, those issues you were having, those challenging customers. And then how are you actually executing on saying no to revenue? Because I struggle with that sometimes.
Anytime I'm chatting with a brand, I always want, it's almost like a freeway. I almost want to send them, so if there's an exit that comes to Creator Match, fantastic. 90% of our calls are not good leads, because it's not that we don't qualify our leads, but there's only so many tech brands that have the amount of money that it takes to actually onboard an agency, which is why we have other partners for other things. So we may actually refer directly to a talent agency. So Creator Match is a brand side agency. Our roster is actually essentially brands. Our goal is to become the agency of record for the biggest tech and fastest growing tech brands in the world. We do not rep talent, and we're very explicit about not repping talent. We have really strong relationships with creators and talent agencies. So sometimes you might say, hey, if the brand, let's say they're in the cybersecurity space, looking for 5 creators a month, the most they have is 10, 15K, 20K in spend. Honestly, their best bet, if I know the creators on a certain roster, I will say, hey, I'm going to toss you alley-oop a lead to you, and we'll send them to a talent agency that reps cybersecurity creators. The brand's super happy, and also they think of us in a great light, and they'll actually refer us out, which I've learned that a strong referral also leads to referrals on the other end. So you always want to essentially pay it forward, and you don't always have to ask for like referral bonuses. And then on the other side, the talent agency is very happy. If the brand wants to work with a lot of creators for very limited spend, that's where our marketplace partners come in, like the Limelights of the world. And we have obviously a very strong relationship there. Only very rarely is the brand ready for an agency. And I oftentimes will tell them, hey, you're not ready for this. Your spend is not even the same amount of money that what we charge as a retainer. We put 4 full-time people on your account, and we want to scale from 5 creators a month to 100 creators a month. And what we're seeing from a spend standpoint, we have brands spending anywhere from 100,000 a month to $1 million a month. And that could be one channel, right? It's like, we really want to come in where I don't want to tell you and say, hey, David, here's the pain that you're going to experience in creator marketing trying to do it in-house, because it's not an easy pitch. I want to say, hey, you tell me your pain points. You're saying, oh my God, sourcing's a nightmare. I feel like an attorney for all the contracts. How do I pay out 500 creators on different net terms, different deliverables? How do I do paid media? All these different things. I'm a growth marketer. I'm a this, I'm a that. I want to be more high level. That's the pain. And then it's, oh, great. That's what we solve. And we come in and take programs, essentially, I would say from 1 to 10 versus 0 to 1. And we've really
Makes sense.
improved that market and better understand our ICP now after about 2 years.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I mean, there's there's just so much opportunity there. I think the challenge sometimes is those companies, just like, it's hard to find the right types of companies that are willing to spend at this. But when you do, I'm sure that you get huge retention. You get, constantly able to grow the partnership and relationship because you're proving the value through executing the campaigns. I want to take us away from this for a little bit and actually go back to your journey, right? Which is, typically in these conversations, I actually don't usually do this, but I'm very interested in your background. Like, why influencer marketing? Why, like, how did you get into this? Like, it's so fascinating. I find myself in it. I'm like, sometimes like, what, like, how did I end up in this? So I want to ask you, like, how did you end up in this?
If you were to ask me before I started this business, I knew nothing about influencer or creator marketing. And, I think you can ask anybody in any field. Oftentimes you just fall into it. And it's so important that early on in your career, you say yes to everything and do everything. So you know what you hate. Like, I could never be an accountant, could never work in finance, but I really did love the marketing and creative side. So I was at Accenture for about 3 years as a consultant. We would consult for the biggest tech brands in the world. And over the last year and a half, I was at some other very large tech companies in consulting, and we were doing a lot of product marketing and really fell in love with marketing. During that time, I started creating content on LinkedIn, and I had my own podcast called The Final Round. You can imagine where a job search podcast would live, and job seekers live on LinkedIn. So I said, hey, a kind of a creative way to meet job seekers where they're at is I'm going to start creating content on LinkedIn about all these recruiters that I interview to help job seekers advance past the final round interview, which is why it's called The Final Round. And I started posting there very early, probably 3-4 years ago. Over time, started building a small audience, small following, and also just like really enjoyed meeting the ecosystem on LinkedIn. Everyone, and they still think it's cringe and it's not as sexy as being a TikTok creator, YouTube creator, whatever it is. But I really enjoyed these people that were also working 9-to-5s that had these small little side hustles. I did career coaching and podcasting. Because I started growing that following, I joined the LinkedIn Creators Program, which is a bit more I was a bit larger at the time. And then I got a couple cool paid opportunities, became a LinkedIn learning instructor during this time. And then I said, hey, there has to be something here. Like, how am I chatting with a creator that is the same level of a Mr. Beast on YouTube and on LinkedIn, that is the biggest sales voice, that has 300,000 followers, and he doesn't make a dollar on this platform, but his content gets millions of views. So I said, hey, let me actually start with a talent agency. So I actually started repping, and this is like well before Creator Match was even a thing. I repped LinkedIn creators. And I want to say we had actually the first, when I say we, myself, the first talent agency ever for LinkedIn creators. Had about 5 creators in the roster. The hardest thing though was the market was not mature at
There.
all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
This
had to
is 2.5 years ago, right?
probably 3 years ago, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it. Scrapping for scraps of scraps outside the restaurant in the alley where the rats are in the garbage can. So like, let's say the XYZ brand spending millions on other platforms would do $2,000 monthly tests. That's not a retainer. That is the entire budget. So we're splitting that with the creator, but I knew there was value here. And over time, the market started to increase and increase. But I did not love the talent side, to be honest with you. It's not, again, not my zone of genius. I really enjoyed the brand side. So we actually flipped the model, broke exclusivity with these creators, went over to the brand side, rebranded to Creator Match, and then we were kind of off to the races. And just month over month, we kept increasing our minimums, continuing to move from very early stage startups, then getting bigger logos, bigger names, more capabilities, and just continuing to grow what we're doing. And now we build creator programs for tech brands. We rep about 20% of the top 50 tech brands in the world. This Forbes list just came out, and like we were like, oh, we recognize all these logos are all our clients. And now we
Nice.
see more than just LinkedIn.
That's insane. Yeah. Congratulations. Like, great journey. And like, oh, I think a lot of people don't realize when they read content or they see founders, like just how much effort and energy goes in to get to that level. And then sometimes it takes these types of conversations where you're able to like verbally say it and then we'll look back and be like, oh, that's actually really impressive. Because as founders, like you're always just thinking, what's the future look like? What's the emergency going on right now? What do I need to do in the next 3 months? And then you don't actually think like, look how far I've come. And I think the big bet that we made, right, both of us saw the idea, which is I felt like content marketing in B2B could get so much better. And people wanted to follow people. They didn't want to follow logos. And influencers and creators became, and I think is continuing to happen, becoming this really exciting channel and motion that most companies should care about. And so when you make this big bet on an industry early on, you think you're fucking crazy, right? Like you're like, oh, 1 minute it's working, 1 minute it's not working. And then over time, you start to see the industry grow. And then you're like, oh, now we're getting momentum. And so I'm so grateful for you to be doing what you do, because then I can point to it and be like, look at these unbelievable creator marketing campaigns. Because in the end of the day, any creator piece of content that's a sponsored brand partnership is essentially an advertisement for the whole industry. And the industry is somewhat small. So I'm always like very thankful for the content that you guys put out, the relationships that you build with the brands. I want to transition a little bit to something that you're making a big bet on, right? So we just before we hit record, right, you mentioned some of the spend on YouTube, right? What are some of the big bets that you're making as an agency right now? Talk to us a little bit about what's the future look like.
So a couple things I would say are kind of the big bets. So I think software has been known as software as a service. I think our goal is to be service as a software, where basically on the outside, you have the humans in the loop for where you need to hold the brand's hand. Because as we know, the brands are, they need a lot of handholding, to be honest with you. And the problem with these campaigns is they're so ever changing. Like everything is I need spent yesterday, 1,000 creators, OpenAI Dev Day got moved up a week, so I'm very nervous and I need to go crazy with my launch. And it's always bigger, splashier, and it's every day there's more noise, more launches, more features, more raising of venture. And I was like, you think you're so cool to raise 100 million, and then you think you're so cool to raise 30 billion. OpenAI just raised 100 and something billion. Like there's different levels to the game. So it's not necessarily you just need more money to spend, but you need to get more creative with creators, basically. So our big bet is ecosystem marketing. And we want to build your world or build your ecosystem through creators. How we do that is what we're calling full stack creator marketing. So all channel creator partnerships, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, paid media behind all of that content to amplify it, brand trips and IRL. So taking so much inspiration from these Coachella houses from Poppy. And why can't we do that at Dreamforce? Why can't we do that at HubSpot Inbound? Why can't we do something IRL with your community? It's also just so much more unique. And then also influencer gifting. So I have friends who are in lifestyle as a niche. Their lobby of their apartment building stacked hundreds of boxes a week of gifting and seeding from brands. Have you ever, David, gotten a gift from a brand?
A few times, and I'm usually like, even if the gift is terrible, I'm always like very excited because it just came to my door and I'm like, holy shit, look at this. Even if I bought the gift, I probably wouldn't want it. But because somebody delivered it to me and did it out of their own free will, I get very excited about that.
And I think that's the wide open opportunity is like these creators are hoping for more IRL moments. They want to meet other professional, like we're not a cool ecosystem yet. No one thinks to say, oh, I'm a LinkedIn creator or LinkedIn influencer. It's not as cool as a YouTube or other platforms, right? Which is where the opportunity is. Like if you come up with a creative gift, people just post about it for free and it is wide open. So I think this ecosystem play is massive. I think trying to move towards instead of software as a service as a software and really just trying to think in a more creative way how to build use cases with creators versus just features. So we call it use case marketing over feature marketing because nobody cares that GPT-5 and 6 and 7 came out, but they care that this use case now can do this for your specific niche. And that's what we're really bullish on ecosystem marketing.
Let me ask you a question, just like separate from what we just talked about, but just like the quality of influencers. When I started in influencer marketing, I had no idea, as you said, right? I launched a watch company in 2017 and I growth hacked Instagram. So I used influencers on Instagram to grow that brand. But when it came to B2B, I had no idea, right? And it's so different and unique. And then there's different creators and influencers, they come in different shapes and sizes and they have different strengths. So a question for you is actually like, have you had scenarios in which a company is like really dissatisfied with an influencer and is like really unhappy with an influencer? What happens in those environments? Like, how involved are you? Is it your reputation that is involved, or like, is it up to the brand? Like, yeah, talk to us a little bit about those situations in which influencers didn't deliver. And you can't guarantee results. I get that, right? And you have to explain that ahead of time, right? For the most part. But what happens when there's like a, I suppose, unhappy client?
So I'm not going to pretend that everything is always perfect. I think it really comes down to being upfront with the brand on what their goals and objectives are. We will not move forward with a brand, even if they're giving us $100 million, if they're not upfront about what success looks like. Because our goal is not to finish the campaign, it's to renew and increase spend and continue to build this program. The only way to get to that promised land is to have them be ecstatic. So I always say, David, when this campaign wraps up and you're chatting internally if it was a success, what are you going to define as success, both quantitatively and qualitatively? Quantitatively might be it's upper funnel, targeted at CPM and just overall impressions and awareness. It might be bottom of funnel, very ROAS, CTR, CBR driven. Or there's a whole new bucket that we're actually introducing because we're hearing this from brands where it's, are we increasing our AI search presence? So we're actually running
Mm.
creator marketing programs right now with the sole focus of outranking your competitors when I'm typing, let's say Airtable versus X competitor, or like, should I use Airtable or the reviews or whatever it is? These LLMs are ranking third party content. So every one of those buckets is a completely different strategy, completely different channel, and completely different bucket of creators. I have creators that get 5 likes but have the most pull in a sales community, whereas other creators get 50 million views on a post, but they have no influence. It's just top of funnel awareness versus creators that do dedicated videos. That's great for AI search essentially. So if we can't define that early on, and that's just us being better and listening, because we've had some things that have not worked early on. Once we define that, then we can really ensure that we're aiming our compass and our direction at the right target. Because if not, then you have misaligned incentives. But we've had campaigns where it got 10 million views, but 0 downloads. And it's like, wait a second, why are you not happy? It's like, oh, well, we actually wanted this, not that. And that's where the so
Mm.
for brands listening, please be upfront. Don't say it's top of funnel when it's actually bottom of funnel. Or don't say it's AI search when it's really bottom of funnel, whatever it may be.
Makes a ton of sense. I have 5 conversations in the last this week alone where I'm like, so how many creators do you want to work with? And then the question is, oh, I don't, the answer is usually, I don't know. Right. And then the question is, well, how much do you want to spend? Oh, don't know yet. We actually need to wait. We need to test. We need to see, what do you recommend? It's like, okay, like, let's be honest. Like, I'm not here to spend all your money. I'm here to take a realistic campaign and make it a reality and actually prove value. And I love the idea of like honest conversations at the earliest stages to align on incentives. Because we're selling a software subscription in a marketplace, sometimes I got a little bit misguided and I was
Sure.
like, you know what, like, we'll just say yes to the subscription revenue, and then they're just unhappy customers because you didn't align on the incentives. I want to come back to one last thing and then we're going to wrap up. The AEO,
Yes.
The number one thing that marketeers care about right now, right? Every single marketeer. What do you care about? Well, we need to rank higher in LLMs. And it's such a new space and a new industry and it's constantly evolving. Influencers and influencer content and just content in general can become a really strong source for these LLMs to reference. What are you doing when you say it's a new channel and it's something unique and it's different? How are you focused on that? And how do you help companies? Let's start with how do you actually get the creators to create content that is good, referenceable content that you know is going to perform? And how do you approach this in this? It's a very evolving space.
So first off, if anybody says that they're experts in this, they're lying and I would not work with them. We're very upfront saying, hey, we're testing this. We're experimenting with this. I think we all can agree this is the future because so much of search is being moved from typing it on Google to typing it in these LLMs. And even if the volume is not changing, the weight that holds in the decision is massive. So maybe you do your research on Google, but then it's like, all right, here's all my context to chat or to Claude or Perplexity. And that's where most people are clicking and actually making decisions. So for us, when we're chatting with brands, and let's say we either ask, are you interested in AI search, or they bring it up, it's a whole different creator playbook. So an example, let's say we do a lot of YouTube creative marketing. Ad integrations, which is typically what influencer marketing is on YouTube, is not effective because it's an ad integration. The title, the thumbnail, nothing's optimized for the brand 30-second slot of a 20-minute video. The difference is instead of ad integrations, we're doing dedicated videos. Dedicated videos, let's say if you're working with, let's just say Airtable as an example, it's I used Airtable to build blank. The thumbnail has Airtable. You're using, chapters in the videos and you're actually optimizing this video to rank for LLMs. Another thing that we're doing is we're optimizing our briefs using third-party AI search tools, similar to how you can optimize your blog, but optimizing it for creators as well, right? So it's just a very different playbook. It's also different sets of creators because you'll have your Mr. Beasts of the world that will only do ad integrations, but never dedicated. And the dedicated usually is the smaller creators that will do full on, it's almost like the UGC side of this world, I would say. So it's a very different world. And then how we're tracking that, there are AI search tools out there. And we're using those and putting the links in there and showing how they're ranking based off of different things. And also what we're thinking about in the future is like, how cool would it be if you're a brand and I can, instead of you coming to me to execute a campaign, I do my research, come to you saying, hey, there's a massive gap when people search these queries or search these questions, you're lacking here. And like your competitor has 20 videos that's getting pulled. Let's absolutely drown out that competitor with this third-party creator content. And it's not just YouTube, right? So every day we're researching and seeing where the data is coming from. So right now the top performing obviously is Reddit, it's LinkedIn, but not just LinkedIn posts, it's LinkedIn Pulse articles, right? So working with creators on that front, it's Instagram, and obviously it's YouTube.
Awesome. I feel like people watching this just got a knowledge bomb about like so many different parts of influencer marketing. That last piece is probably my most excited component, and I need to pick your brain a little bit more on it because I've got so many ideas of how we could work together on it. Well, firstly, before we wrap up, how do people find you? Where can they go and learn more about Creator Match?
Imagine if I didn't say LinkedIn. So to find me, just AJ Eckstein on LinkedIn or creatormatch.com. You can sign up as a creator, join our network, or you can get Match as a brand and actually chat with us and see if it makes sense to build your creator program and also just chat through. We always love sharing learnings and experiments. So like that's an experiment we're running with 2 brands. We can share that with other brands and just see what's working, continue to move the needle for as many tech brands in the world.
I feel like the benefit of running this podcast is sometimes I get to have such great conversations with people like you. And I feel like we should have these conversations more often as industry kind of friends. And thank you again for all the support you've been giving to Limelight. I'm really encouraged by your journey and what you're building and look forward to maybe doing this again soon.
Would love to. Congrats again on the recent raise. Congrats on all the success. It's been great partnering with you. And thanks so much for having me on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Safe Doesn't Scale on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Limelight is the leading AI-powered B2B influencer marketplace and social signals platform. Brands like HubSpot, Webflow, and ZoomInfo use Limelight to power influencer programs at scale. Start your first campaign at limelighthq.com.